Sign the papers, Lily, or we'll make sure the world thinks you finally lost your mind. Those were the last words my mother said before she realized I wasn't the frightened little girl she remembered. They wanted my $350 million legacy. They wanted to lock me in a ward and peel away my life's work like vultures. But they forgot one thing. I built this empire from the dirt, and I knew exactly where to bury the bodies, metaphorically speaking. This is how I turned their greed into their greatest nightmare. The rain in the city always felt different when you were watching it from the 60th floor of a penthouse office. It didn't just fall. It felt like it was trying to wash away the noise of the streets below. My name is Lily Rose, and for the last 10 years, I haven't slept more than 4 hours a night. While other women my age were scrolling through vacation photos, I was balancing ledgers, negotiating land deeds, and turning a crumbling boutique hotel into a global chain worth $350 million. I thought I had reached the summit. I thought the view from the top would be peaceful. I was wrong. The higher you climb, the thinner the air gets, and the more people look at your oxygen tank with envy. The betrayal didn't start with a bang. It started with a family dinner. My mother Eleanor and my sister Sarah had invited me over to the old family estate. It was a place I usually avoided. The walls there were soaked in memories of a father who worked himself to death, and a mother who spent every penny he earned before the ink on his paycheck was dry. "You look thin, Lily," Eleanor said, swirling a glass of expensive vintage wine that I had paid for. "Success is wearing you down. You're erratic, unstable." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "I'm not unstable, Mom. I'm exhausted. There's a difference." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes glinting with a forced sugary sympathy. "We've been talking to some specialists, Lily, people who handle high-stress breakdowns. We think you need a long, long break. Somewhere private, somewhere secure." She slid a thick folder across the mahogany table. I opened it, expecting travel brochures. Instead, I saw legal affidavits. My signature was requested on a full power of attorney transfer. Underneath that was a voluntary commitment form for a psychiatric facility in the mountains. "If you sign these," Sarah whispered, "we take over the day-to-day stress of the hotel chain. You go get better." "Everyone wins." "And if I don't?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. Eleanor set her glass down with a sharp clack. "Then we go to the board. We have testimonies, Lily. We have logs of your outbursts. We have doctors ready to testify that the pressure has snapped your mind. We will have you declared unfit, and you'll be locked away in a state ward where we won't be able to protect you. Sign the papers, or we'll make you a ghost in your own life." I looked at the two women who shared my blood. They didn't see a daughter or a sister. They saw a bank account they wanted to liquidate. "I need a moment to think," I said, standing up. "Don't take too long," Sarah called out as I walked toward the door. "The car to the facility is already scheduled for tomorrow morning." I didn't go home. I went straight to my office. If they wanted to play a game of shadows, I was going to show them that I owned the night. They wanted my empire? Fine. But I was going to make sure that by the time they touched it, it was made of glass and ready to shatter. I spent that entire night in the glow of my monitors, the blue light stinging my eyes as the city outside went quiet. Eleanor and Sarah thought they were holding a winning hand, but they had made one fatal mistake. They assumed I was still the girl who sought their approval. They didn't realize that in the world of high-stakes real estate, you learn to track every penny and every person. I called my lead investigator, a man who worked in the shadows and spoke only in facts. "I need everything," I told him. "Every debt Eleanor has hidden, every offshore account Sarah thinks is private. And find out who those specialists are that they've been talking to." By 4 o'clock in the morning, the files started hitting my inbox. It was worse than I thought, and better than I could have hoped. My mother hadn't just been spending her allowance. She had been gambling on the very stock she was trying to steal from me. She had leveraged her own home, the family estate, against the hope that my hotel chain would go public this year. She was drowning in millions of dollars of debt to people who didn't take "I'll pay you later" for an answer. And Sarah, my sweet sister, had been funneling money from our father's trust fund into a failed tech startup. They weren't trying to save me. They were trying to keep themselves out of prison. I leaned back, a cold smile touching my lips. They wanted to declare me mentally unfit? Fine. I would give them a performance they'd never forget. The next morning, I arrived at the estate just as the sun was breaking through the fog. A black sedan was idling in the driveway, the transport to the facility. Eleanor and Sarah were waiting in the foyer, looking like they were attending a funeral they were secretly enjoying. "Have you decided, Lily?" Eleanor asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "The doctors are waiting." I walked in, stumbling slightly, making sure my hair was just a bit too messy, my eyes wide and frantic. "I couldn't sleep," I whispered, clutching my handbag tight. "I see them, Mom. I see the people in the walls of the hotels. They're watching the ledgers." Sarah glanced at Eleanor, a spark of triumph in her eyes. They thought the pressure had finally broken me. "It's okay, Lily," Sarah said, stepping forward with the folder. "Just sign. We'll make the people in the walls go away." I took the pen with a shaking hand. I hovered it over the power of attorney line. "But if I sign this, you'll take care of everything? The debts, the creditors, the people Sarah owes money to for that Silicon Valley disaster?" Sarah's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" Eleanor snapped, her mask slipping for a second. "Oh, I've been talking to the walls, Mom," I said, my voice suddenly dropping the act and becoming as sharp as a razor. "And the walls told me that you owe $12 million to a private lending group in Macau. They also told me that the specialists you hired are actually disgraced paramedics with a history of kidnapping for hire." I stood up straight, the fragile Lily rose, vanishing instantly. I didn't sign their papers. Instead, I pulled a single sheet of paper from my bag. "This is a buyout agreement," I said. "I just bought the debt on this estate. I also bought every single one of Sarah's defaulted loans. As of 10 minutes ago, I am not just your daughter and sister. I am your primary creditor. You don't own this house anymore. I do." Eleanor lunged for the paper, but I stepped back. "And about that facility? I think you're right. Someone does need a quiet place to stay. But it won't be me." The silence in the room was heavy, the kind of silence that happens right before a storm breaks. My mother looked at the walls of the estate, the paintings, the chandeliers, the history, and realized that the floor beneath her feet had just turned into thin air. "You can't do this," Eleanor hissed, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and genuine fear. "I am your mother. This house is mine." "Legally? Not anymore," I replied, crossing my arms. "You used this property as collateral for a lifestyle you couldn't afford. You gambled with the roof over your head, Mom. I just caught it before it hit the ground. Consider me your new landlord." Sarah, ever the opportunist, tried a different tactic. She started to cry. Big, fat crocodile tears. "Lily, we were just scared for you." "We didn't mean to. We just needed help," I said, not even looking at her. "I know about the offshore accounts. I know you were planning to sell off the Mediterranean branch of my chain the second I was sedated in that facility. You didn't want to help me. You wanted to harvest me." I walked toward the door but stopped at the threshold. "I'm giving you 48 hours to pack your things. After that, the locks are being changed. And don't bother calling the board of directors. I've already sent them a digital copy of the voluntary commitment forms you tried to force me to sign. They don't take kindly to people trying to kidnap their CEO." I left them there, standing in the ruins of their greed. But as I drove away, I knew it wasn't over. People like Eleanor and Sarah don't go away quietly. They crawl into the corners and wait for a chance to bite. By that evening, the countermove began. I started seeing the headlines on the tabloid sites I knew they had connections with. "Hotel heiress Lily Rose, a mental health crisis hidden behind billions," followed by leaked, edited audio of me sounding frantic from that morning's confrontation. They were trying to tank the company's stock, to force a margin call on my personal loans. They wanted to make me so toxic that the banks would abandon me. My phone was blowing up. My PR team was panicking. But I sat in my office, sipping a cold tea, watching the stock ticker go red. I had expected this. In fact, I had counted on it. I picked up the phone and called my broker. "It's time," I said. "Start the blackout protocol. I want every share they dump to be bought by an anonymous shell company. And call the press. Tell them I'm holding a live emergency gala at the Rose Grand Hotel tomorrow night." I have an announcement that will change the industry forever. If they wanted a public meltdown, I was going to give them a supernova. I wasn't just going to defend my name. I was going to buy the one thing my mother cherished more than her reputation. I spent the next few hours coordinating with a contact in Europe. There was a certain rival hotel group, a massive, predatory firm that Eleanor had always dreamed of being part of. They were the ones she had been secretly talking to, promising them a backdoor entry into my empire once she had me locked away. I decided right then, I wasn't just going to stop her. I was going to buy the very people she was selling me out to. The Rose Grand Hotel was glowing like a diamond under the city lights. Every major player in the industry was there, draped in silk and diamonds, whispering about the headlines. They were all waiting to see if Lily Rose was finally going to break. I stood behind the velvet curtains of the main stage, wearing a gown the color of midnight. My investigator leaned in and whispered, "They're here, front row. They brought the specialists with them, disguised as security. They're planning to take you right after you speak." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace. I could see Eleanor and Sarah through a crack in the curtain. They looked triumphant. They had spent the last 24 hours telling everyone who would listen that I was having a manic episode, and that tonight was my final public appearance before retirement. The lights dimmed, and the roar of the crowd softened to a murmur. I stepped onto the stage. The camera flashes were blinding, a rhythmic pulse of white light. "Good evening," I said, my voice steady, echoing through the hall. "There has been a lot of speculation lately regarding my health, my family, and the future of this empire. People say I'm unstable. They say I'm unfit to lead." I glanced directly at Eleanor. She smiled at me, the kind of smile a snake gives a mouse. "My mother and sister," I continued, "were so concerned that they prepared legal documents to take over my life. They even found a lovely, quiet place for me to stay in the mountains." A ripple of shocked murmurs moved through the room. But they were right about one thing. I am changing the way I do business. I realized that keeping things in the family was my biggest mistake. I hit a button on the remote in my hand, and the massive screen behind me flickered to life. It didn't show hotel profits. It showed bank statements, specifically Sarah's fraudulent transfers and Eleanor's secret contracts with our biggest rival, the Vane Group. "Turn that off," Sarah screamed, standing up, her face turning a deep, ugly purple. "I'm not finished, Sarah," I said coldly. "You see, Eleanor was planning to sell my soul to the Vane Group, but while she was busy plotting my kidnapping, I was busy with a merger of my own. As of 4 p.m. today, I have officially acquired the majority stake in the Vane Group itself." The room went dead silent. I had just bought the predators who were waiting to eat me. "So, Mom," I leaned over the podium, "the people you were counting on to help you take my company, they now work for me. And their first order of business, they've provided me with every email, every recorded call, and every bribe you offered them to help you disappear me." Eleanor tried to speak, but no sound came out. She looked around the room, realizing that every powerful person in the city was now looking at her with pure disgust. "I have one more announcement," I said, looking back at the crowd. "The Rose Estate, the family home, is being donated to a foundation for victims of financial abuse. My mother and sister will be vacated by dawn, and as for their concerns about my mental health," I gestured to the back of the room, where 4 uniformed police officers were stepping forward. "I've decided to let the authorities handle the evaluation, not of me, but of the conspiracy to commit kidnapping and corporate fraud." The chaos that followed was controlled, clinical, and absolute. As the officers approached the front row, Sarah tried to bolt toward the side exit, but the very security she had hired, the men who were supposed to whisk me away, simply stood aside. They knew who signed their checks now. I watched from the stage as Eleanor sat frozen, her hand still clutching her champagne glass so hard, it shattered. The red wine spilled over her white designer dress, looking exactly like the wreckage she had tried to make of my life. There was no screaming, no dramatic struggle. Just the heavy, rhythmic sound of handcuffs clicking into place. "You'll regret this, Lily," Eleanor finally screamed as she was led out past the cameras. "I gave you life." "You gave me life," I whispered into the microphone, my voice carrying to the very back of the ballroom. "But you tried to turn it into a prison. I'm just giving you the keys to your own." Within an hour, the gala resumed, but I was already gone. I didn't need the applause or the networking. I went to the one place my mother never thought to look, the small, dusty rooftop garden of the very first boutique hotel I ever bought. The city lights stretched out like a sea of fallen stars. For the first time in 10 years, the weight on my chest wasn't from the business. It was gone. My investigator called me shortly after midnight. "It's done, Lily," he said. "The evidence of the fraud is ironclad. Sarah is already trying to pin it all on your mother to get a plea deal. They'll be tied up in legal battles for the next decade. They don't have a cent left to fight with." I hung up and looked at the moon. I hadn't just saved my $350 million chain. I had bought back my freedom. I realized then that my remix wasn't about the money or the hotels. It was about realizing that blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. And I was finally loyal to myself. I took the folder they had given me at dinner, the one meant to lock me away, and I dropped it into a small fire pit on the roof. I watched the flames lick the edges of the paper until power of attorney turned into ash and drifted away into the night sky. Lily Rose was no longer the daughter of a socialite or the sister of a thief. I was the architect of my own destiny, and for the first time, the view from the top was perfectly clear. Where are you all watching this story from, and what time is it there? Let me know in the comments. End question. If your own family tried to steal everything you built, would you forgive them, or would you burn the bridges like Lily did? If you enjoyed Lily's journey of cold revenge and ultimate success, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to Lilycalmstories for more tales of power, betrayal, and justice.